the next edition of our Fan Bites by Brain Labs webinars. Today we are talking all about the HFSS ad ban and how you can get ahead of it. As people will have seen, the title of this was actually 6 months to grow your TikTok account. As you may have seen, then actually the dates have been pushed back, but we figured it's still going to be good to go ahead and talk about it anyway. All it means is we've got more time to try and get ahead of it. So without further ado, I am going to share my screen. We're going to look at, I'm going to try and make this as exciting as possible. We're going to look at what some of the rules are. Some of the rules are very exciting. Some of them are not exciting. I'm going to try and make this presentation as exciting as possible. If any public speaking coaches saw this, they definitely say you have way too much text on the slide. But that's okay. What can you do? We're talking about legislation and rules. So I'm going to dive in right now with 6 months to grow your TikTok account. And then I'm going to introduce our panel members and we are going to turn it into a bit of a discussion, some of the stuff you can do. So kicking off, as I mentioned, the HFSS online advertising ban was originally scheduled to come into place in January 2023. It looks like that is now going to be in January 2024. There's a lot of discussion as to whether the ban should be pushed back or not. I know a lot of advertisers, retailers are very keen for it to be pushed back. A lot of health lobbyists are keen for it not to be. But we're here to talk about what we can do as an advertising industry rather than looking at the morality of advertising HFSS foods. So just very quickly, let's talk about what is the HFSS Promotions Ban. HFSS, as I'm sure most people know, are foods that are high in fat, salt and sugar. And when the ban comes into place, that means that you're not going to be allowed to do any paid for online social media advertising, which is a huge change. Specifically relating to influencers, you're also not allowed to do any paid for influencer marketing. And for those that think they can be sneaky and get around it by gifting products, the legislation has specifically called out gifting as a form of payment. So a huge change here means that a lot of brands that you're seeing pumping loads of money into social advertising, working with influencers, all of the great stuff that we help with actually isn't going to be allowed under the new rules from when they come into place. There are a few things that are excluded in the ban, however. One is going to be brand advertising. What that specifically means is advertising that is promoting a brand in general without showing or focusing on a specific HFSS product is going to be allowed. That's why sometimes, I'm sure we've all seen that ad on TV. It's a McDonald's ad and there's no burger or chips in sight. It's just smiling farmers and vegetables having a happy time. That's an example of brand advertising. So that's still going to be allowed. SMEs, so small, medium companies with fewer than 250 employees, they're not going to be affected by the ban either. So if anyone is with a small company at the moment, then actually you can still get around the rules here. And finally, non-paid for marketing in brands' own media. Now, this is a really interesting one. It actually calls out organic website, organic social content as allowed. And why I think that's really interesting is that it means that if you have, let's use TikTok as the example here, but it applies to any social account. The brand has built a large social following. They're still allowed to put out organic social content on their own channels. They're just not allowed to promote it with paid budget. And I guess that was the inspiration for this webinar and this panel, right? Is that we've got up until what we thought was going to be the 1st of January 23. It's now looking like it's going to be 24. We've got this time to actually really focus on growing your account, building that engaged audience so that when the rules come into place, you have an active audience that you can put out organic content to let them see. One thing that I think is also worth mentioning, there are also going to be some legislation coming in around in-store marketing. That's going to include a ban on volume discounts. So when you pop to your local shops, you're not going to see buy one, get one free on chocolate bars anymore, which I am actually quite devastated about. And you're also going to see location restrictions as well. We've already seen some of these come into place, but effectively what that means is within supermarkets, they're not going to be allowed to place HFSS products near the entrance, near checkouts, or on aisle ends. which I think is really interesting as digital marketers and social media managers, because what this means is that the impulse buy is going to be a lot less relevant here. It means that if you are a brand with super bright packaging and you get really good sales in store because you're placed in great locations, you've got good placement on the shelf, actually you're going to lose that. And what it means is that as marketers, we actually have an opportunity here. If we want people to go in and buy a specific product, let's sell them on the brand, on that product online, so that when they go in store, they're actually looking for that specific product rather than going in to, make an impulse purchase, see what takes their fancy. I told you I'd try and be quick on the legislation slide. I hope that all made sense to everyone. I'd like to introduce our panel. We have Lola, Christopher, and Emily. If you'd like to each say hello and just give a little background on some of the stuff you've been up to recently for everyone, that would be great.
Shall I go first? Morning, everyone. I'm Lola, Brand Partnerships Manager here at FanBites by Brain Labs. I've been at the company for over a year and a half now, and I'm gradually moving towards focusing solely.
Lola was in the middle of a really great story there, but she seems to have dropped out. So Emily, let's go over to you.
I was going to say, I'm sure that was going to be absolutely captivating. But yeah, I will jump in whilst Lola reconnects. My name is Emily. I'm a junior campaigns manager here at FanBites. I've worked on a variety of campaigns, some of which have been food and drink focused, especially in the US, but also some larger, well-known home brands such as John Lewis.
Manager here at FanBites by Brain Labs. So I've been at the company for around a year and a half now. I was initially working across a total range of verticals, but I am currently moving towards focusing solely on food and drinks and brands with sustainable purpose. Very excited to be speaking today, and I hope you'll enjoy. Did Chris manage to make it to the panel?
I'll just say Chris is having some classic technical difficulties on Livestorm, but hopefully might be appearing at some point. So I'm sure he'll introduce himself. If you suddenly hear a Scottish man speaking, that is Chris. I'm sure he'll do a lovely introduction then.
No drama. We'll kick off anyway. So I guess, when it comes to this HFSS regulations and ways that brands can grow their TikTok account, I know that we've had a lot of conversations in the office here talking about the two key things, two key things that brands should be thinking about when they're growing an account. The first being really great content that is going to make their channel look really cool, make it appealing, make people want to follow it. And then once they've got the great content on there, the second part is the discovery. How can you drive people to the account and make sure that people are seeing their content? So I thought that for this session, we'd look at those as two sections, looking at the content and then looking at the discovery. So if we kick off on the content, I guess I'd love to start with what kind of food and drink content are we seeing from users and creators on TikTok right now, and what do you think is working well?
So I think that one of the best things about TikTok when it comes to food and drink is that there's really such a huge level of diversity in the type of content that we're seeing on the platform at the moment. So when you look at other social media platforms, especially when it comes to YouTube, Instagram, even Facebook, generally speaking, food content is really recipe focused. And what TikTok's done is it's essentially broadened the criteria for ways in which food and drinks content can be successful. So whilst users and content creators are still having loads of fun with the more traditional sketches that you might be used to seeing within the recipe and taste test realms, they're also thinking outside the box and getting a bit more creative with their content. Emily, I know you've worked across loads of our food and drinks campaigns and you're super up to date with some of the more recent emerging creatives in this sector. Are there any specific examples you can share of these non-traditional content forms?
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, TikTok's a great platform because it provides such a vast variety of content types that you can have. But across some campaigns that I've worked on or just that I've seen or that have performed really well within our wider company, there are sort of three, I suppose, content styles that I think work really, really well. One of them would be ASMR content, which I'm sure all of you are familiar with. But if not, it's let me get this right, Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response, I believe it is called. And it's content which is highly sensory. You know, people might open packages or prepare food and drink, and the audio and visuals, while they're relatively simple, can be incredibly captivating and have amazing results. I think ASMR is currently on about 335 billion views on TikTok. So for a video which might seem, you know, what's the point? It can actually be a fantastic in for food and drink brands. Another really, really popular content style is the more traditional sort of vlog style content, which kind of originated on YouTube, has gone over to TikTok, where people will show, you know, what I eat in a day. And that's got a lot of subsections. You know, you've got body positivity and food wellness, and then you've got some other like dietary requirements. But it can be a great way for brands to really natively engage with influencers and actually have their product or their brand in a format which is already really, really native to the person's channel. So that can have some really, really great engagement rates and really positive sentiment in the comments. And the final one, which I've seen a lot, is it's a hard one to sort of pinpoint, but it'd be the very, very aesthetically pleasing content, which is actually filmed in quite a high resolution, which is also a really popular way for food and drink brands to show themselves on TikTok. This higher production level, it can make viewers feel like they're watching something really, really professional, when actually it's just been filmed on an average phone. People can show recipes and show products, and that can be a really, really captivating way as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that ASMR style content, as well as like super aesthetically pleasing content, is definitely something that food and drinks brands should be capitalizing on at the moment before the ban kicks in.
Absolutely. I think it is going to be a massive shift and a massive change. And personally, it's some of my favorite content to watch, so I'm pretty gutted about that. But it's definitely something to capitalize on whilst people can, for sure.
And Emily, I believe you've actually sent me a couple of examples of those 3 different types of content styles that you mentioned. So I'm going to pull those up here. I hope everyone has headphones in and turned up nice and loud ready, because I think this first example is going to be ASMR. And following up, Emily, I believe you said this one was going to be the vlog style content. So let's take a look.
I know I drink a lot of matcha, but let me just put you on a one more drink. This one is Wakocha. It's a Japanese black tea with black sesame and chocolate nuts. Kind of a cross between matcha and honcha. Pretty good, so you should definitely try this one out.
And finally, the aesthetically pleasing, slightly higher production value.
What I eat in a day as a registered dietitian and why. So you guys really love my What I Eat in a Day videos, and I started posting them on TikTok because I saw a lot of toxic What I Eat in a Day videos and people underfueling, so I thought if someone sees what a healthy relationship with food looks like and a dietitian eating their favorite foods, then it maybe would give some individuals meal ideas or confidence to know that they can eat foods they love and still have a healthy diet. So I'm going to continue making these videos, but I'm going to focus a little bit more on the why of what I'm eating, not just what I'm eating. I think these videos can be great, but it's also really important to remember that while you're watching them, that comparing yourself to anyone else's diet is not helpful. Even if we all ate the same exact way every day, we would all look different. We all have our different needs, different preferences, and that is totally okay. This is just a reminder that this is not a recommendation of what you should be eating in a day. It's just my personal experience, what I'm craving that day, and what I ended up eating, which varies every day.
Thank you guys for being here. I love sharing what I eat with you guys and realistic nutrition advice, easy meal ideas. So definitely hit the follow if you didn't already, and I can't wait to keep sharing.
That was definitely the vlog one, wasn't it? So I think there are 3 really cool pieces of organic content. What about when brands get involved? How can brands take this style of content and make it work for them?
So I truly believe that the secret formula to food and drinks brands cutting through a relatively saturated market is really simple. Define your brand tone of voice and then channel that tone of voice consistently. So when it comes to content styles, optimum posting times, copy, hashtags, sounds, and even influencers, These are all variables that will need some level of testing. However, if your brand's personality remains unique and true to itself consistently, then TikTok users will be able to recognize your content regardless of the context in which they're seeing it. And this will really help you grow your brand and your credibility on the platform. And then comes the second most important thing that you need to focus on, which is, of course, the content style. And my recommendation would really be to test a broad range of creatives for at least a month here. And by that, I mean working your brand into trend-led content, comedic content, seasonal, cultural, and so on. And then working out which style of content, if not a combination, is driving the best results and seeing the most success in relation to your key KPIs and metrics. So whether that's views, engagement, brand uplift, increased account followers, etc., really just testing and learning and optimizing along the way. I don't know if Chris has managed to join yet, but Emily, do you have any would you agree with that? Do you think that really rings true for the brands that follow these steps?
Yeah, entirely. I think something you said, which was really important, is to try different content styles. I think something which I've experienced is brands being, understandably very proud and quite possessive over their brand identity and wanting to make sure that every TikTok video they make is very, very clear and concise in conveying all of their values and their brand. And sometimes that might not work on TikTok, and it's just being experimental. And you take a brand like M&S Food, who are really, really successful on TikTok, and they've got a very traditional and very household name brand, but they've got a very strong tone of voice on TikTok where they can produce content which is really fun, it's really engaging, and it's not always about integrating M&S products. Not every video is, oh my gosh, this is an M&S product you need to go and buy, but it's about their understanding of cultural movements and popular culture and jumping on trending sounds and then being able to integrate those really natively onto their channel, which work really well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that brand identity as well, more so when the ad ban kicks in, is going to play such a huge part in whether brands are successful or not. So really want to kind of pay attention to and focus on discovering, what your brand identity is, what the personality and tone of voice is, and then finding ways to make that apparent within all of the content that you're producing.
Absolutely. Like there's a UK donut brand called Donut Time UK. I don't think anyone from there is on here. Hello if you are. But they have created a great tone of voice on TikTok, but obviously they're an example of a company who are going to run into issues because I'd say at least 70% of their content shows a donut in it. So they're going to be someone going, oh my gosh, we're going to have to really change what we're going to do. But they already have a very, very clear tone of voice. Their content is very bold, it's colourful, and they've already got some sort of influencers as brand ambassadors. So even when you see their content, you think, oh, that's a Donut Time UK video, and it doesn't necessarily need to have the products in it. So sort of harnessing that brand tone of voice now will be super beneficial, I think, going forward.
And I think as a company, we have some experience in that, working with, moving slightly away from food for a second, with Lalo, a sex toy brand, which obviously also can't show the product. And Lalo, I think you were going to touch on that as to how actually what are some of the ways that you've been able to get around not showing products but still promoting a brand.
Yeah, of course. Do you know if Joe managed to get any creatives onto the slide?
I don't think so.
No worries at all. Okay, so to provide some context, like Joe mentioned, Lalo is a high-end sexual wellness brand, and they started working with us over a year ago now. And our approach has been pretty simple. So we basically produce clever influencer creatives, which let every single person on TikTok know that we're promoting a fancy vibrator without actually saying those words or even showing the products. So it really is just a case of thinking outside of the box and getting a little creative. And this is basically what the HFSS brands will need to be doing when regulation. But yeah, without kind of being extra visually, it might be a little bit difficult to explain what the creators entail.
And I think another question that I had, and I wonder if a lot of people will too, is we're talking about a real range of brands, right? We've gone from Donut Time to M&S and Ocado and John Lewis. So I'd love to know, Emily, maybe this one's for you, is actually, does it differ between generations when you're looking at different target audiences?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, a lot of people, I think, who perhaps aren't as familiar with TikTok, you're going to assume that it is a largely Gen Z platform with a lot of young people on it, a lot of teenagers and things, which is true. And that's obviously a massive part of the platform. But there are a lot of other demographics on TikTok. So for John Lewis particularly, we've been targeting younger families or perhaps new homeowners or young families, especially with the seasonal content. So while you can reach a younger audience, TikTok has got the potential to find those subsections and those subcategories. And a great thing about TikTok is the For You page in that we might make a piece of content, hoping it's going to reach a certain demographic, and actually it finds someone else, and it can sort of really help to grow your followers there.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting. And what about, to touch on some of those different brands, and you've mentioned growing the personalities. How do you do that? What approach do you take when you're looking to create a personality on TikTok? Lola, I wonder if you can share how we've been doing this for Ocado.
Yeah, of course. So I would say more often than not, when approaching a strategy for TikTok, especially if we're planning for a long-term partner, the strategy also begins with understanding what the brand's overarching ambitions are, not just on TikTok, and what their underlying challenges, goals, and values are across the board. So once we have this information, then it's easier for us to work out where TikTok can complement the full marketing strategy and which of those pain points TikTok can help alleviate, especially when it comes to brand personality. So if we do use Ocado as an example, who are one of our amazing partners this year, when I first started speaking with their marketing team in 2021, they expressed a couple of their challenges lay in brand perception and then share of social media audience in the grocery sector. So Ocado had essentially done their research, and they had the data to suggest that, generally speaking, Ocado was perceived as a middle-class grocery platform, which is lacking diversification within its customer base, and also that their active customer base weren't currently following them on social media. So knowing these pain points meant that we could keep them in mind whilst building out the full strategy, and knowing the brand wanted to diversify their customer base meant that we could use this information to inform our influence strategy, demonstrating stronger representation within different communities. And then also their tagline of "There's an Ocado just for you" has really paved the way for a lot of the content within the campaign, essentially making the recipe-led creatives hopefully achievable and affordable for all. So in conclusion, my advice would be to make your TikTok strategy bigger than TikTok, bigger than a dance challenge or a food trend, and then focus on your overarching goals for the year. Then be smart and selective about the ways in which you use TikTok to achieve them.
Love that. And we've had a great question in the box about, which I think ties in nicely, which is, do brands even have to talk about their brand with creative to really make an impact on social? Or, for example, should brands like Red Bull focus on wider conversations and customer interests?
I think it can be a blend, to be honest. I don't think there's any kind of one boot fits all rule that applies to this, but that kind of goes back to the point I made originally with testing and learning is so important. Because whilst one content style and creative approach might work for one brand, it might be completely different for another. And I think that you'll find when you do familiarize yourself with the different brands that are succeeding on TikTok, some of them are really focusing on that reactive trend-led content day in, day out. Others are focusing on more meaningful, potentially cultural topics and things that are happening in the media. And it really is just a case of finding out what that niche is that works for you and what that content type works, and then running with it. And also adapting. It might be a case that for a few months, one kind of formula is working really well, but you will likely need to change that over time.
Makes a lot of sense. And I think for just for the last minute or two while we talk about the content before we go on to the discovery section, you sent me an example from a brand that we work with called Wannadate, which I'm going to pull up a couple of examples. I think this has been really interesting to see how, a relatively unknown brand, it's a challenger brand, is able to actually drive really great conversion, get good engagement on TikTok. Let me pull up the examples now, which are going to be here. You can see already in the comments actually the kind of sentiment that fans are getting, and you can tell from the thumbnails that the videos are going to be slightly wacky. I guess this would be an example of paid for influencer content, right? So we can keep doing this kind of stuff until the ban comes in. Some brands are really leaning into that now, almost making hay while the sun is shining, growing their accounts as big as possible. Let me play one of the videos here for you so you can get a sense of actually what the content looks like and how they're using influencer and organic content to drive this kind of sentiment.
Whilst that's loading, I can give some context if that's helpful. So basically, shall I continue? Why don't I fill everyone in and then can play the bit after? But basically, Wannadate are, like Joe mentioned, a really fantastic example of a challenger brand who was happy to be a little bit ballsy and open-minded towards their TikTok approach, and it really did pay off. So Melissa Bartow, who is the Wannadate founder, had recently obtained investment from Shark Tank, and she'd set aside a portion of her marketing budget for TikTok. And the creative strategy, again, was relatively simple. We worked with 2 influencers who demonstrate super clear and consistent niches. And we basically just made sure that those niches were apparent within the creative that they were producing for the brand. So we had Katie, who is otherwise known as Girl with Green Beanie on the left here, who worked her From Saddie to Baddie storyline in, which is essentially just a mental and physical glow up after coming out of a really rubbish relationship. And then we had Tony on the right, who just kept things raunchy, comedic, made sure that his weird duck and sexy assistant were present throughout the content. And it really was as simple as that. The content drove 14 times the amount of views that we guaranteed the client. And it also drove an exceptionally high amount of link and bio clicks for the amount spent on the campaign. But yeah, Joe, if you wouldn't mind pressing play now, to give these guys a little bit of an insight into how it all panned out.
We'll start with Katie.
Hi, that's me. I'm going to show you how I went from this to that. But more importantly, how I went from sad bitch to bad bitch.
How's it hanging, Barry? If you know me, you know that I have a massive sweet tooth. So today I'm going to show you how I make my favorite healthy fudge. The secret ingredient behind this healthy fudge. Wannadate date spread. This stuff's amazing. 25 calories per serving. I love it. I love it. I love it. I got chocolate, cinnamon, pumpkin, and vanilla. Today we're going to be using the vanilla. All you need to make the fudge is the Wannadate spread and ice cream. The rest is optional, but I like to add coconut, granola, almonds, and chocolate chips. I saw Wannadate one time when I was watching Shark Tank, and it literally changed my life. Literally. I love it. I'm only making 6 today, otherwise I'd be eating all 24. Betty Crocker is literally shaking right now. All right, we're going to freeze for 2 hours. We're going to try it. Cheers, buddy. 10 out of 10. Okay, I'm going to go so I can finish this plate. I love you, bye.
So yeah, I feel like that was potentially a little more in line with what people are used to seeing from a food brand on TikTok. It's kind of, there's a little bit of testimonial in there. There's a little bit of recipe going on. There's a little bit of why my life's better now that I'm using this brand. But it's all super high energy. It does still feel authentic. It really blends in well with her natural content style. And then we have Tony, who was slightly different.
Let's get him up as well.
No, my assistant. What you done was you tried to kill me once. She fed me cashew butter, which I'm highly allergic to. But now I have this new badass shit. It's called Wannadate. It's so good it was even on Shark Tank. And it has 0 sugar added. It's a date spread. You can put it on basically anything you want. Tastes so fucking good. Ooh, she likes that, don't you? Murderer. Sometimes I just lather my body in it. Date spread. So you got.
There you
There
go.
it is.
Quite unconventional when it comes to branded content, right? But it really worked. And I think this is a great segue into I guess the second part of what we're going to talk about today, which is all about discovery. So hopefully you've got some ideas of what kind of content you're going to make on your account now. Now let's think about how we can start driving people to it. And I guess my first question would be, how can you work with influencers and creators to drive people to your own account?
I'm happy to jump in here, Lola, if you want. So I think something which is really, really important, which I was going to mention when you were talking about content, is don't underestimate the intelligence of your followers and of your viewers, and people will be able to tell very, very quickly if something is an ad, and if it doesn't, if it doesn't fit with the type of content that they're going to watch, they're going to skip super, super quickly. So working with influencers in a really organic and native way is incredibly important. So something we did on a campaign with a brand called Sugar Wish, who were a US-based sweet treat gifting service, where you would send an email to someone and they would get to pick their own Sugar Wish box, which could be sort of cookies or sweets or candy or whatever. So something we did was having a 2-part video. So the first part of the video would be posted on the influencer's account. They would build loads of traction and excitement about the comments. And then they would go and watch part 2, which is going to be on the Sugar Wish channel, as we were trying to do a bit of an account growth with them. They were, really, really new on TikTok and just wanted to gain some followers. So having that interaction between the 2 videos, one, makes it seem like a really organic partnership. The influencer is really, proud of the brand and wanting to, direct people to their channel, but also can help with followers and with views. So a technical thing which is really cool to do is if the influencer that can then pin the other video in their comments. So they have a video on their account and then the Sugar Wish channel has uploaded the part 2. You can get the influencer to, put a comment going, you've watched this part, go and see part 2 now, and then link the video. And that can really, really help with traction as well.
Yeah, that was a really great strategy, actually. But also, I would say that when it comes to content, specifically in relation to account growth, there are 2 different forms of content, right? So we've got influencers who are posting on their own channels for their own audiences to see, and then hopefully click through and follow your own account. And then there's also a form of content where it's more content creators producing content for you directly as the brand, and that content isn't going anywhere on the influencer's channel, but it's only going on your own channel. And with that in mind, my word of advice would definitely be to be relatively open-minded when it comes to the creators that you're working with, because the rule of making sure your brand marries up with the creator's normal content style doesn't apply as much in this situation. And at the end of the day, if you are a health food brand and you really like a lifestyle creator's content, but they don't talk about, consuming health food in their everyday, that isn't necessarily a deal breaker. You just need someone who is talented in making great content and can interpret a brief well.
And a question from Chloe that we've had is, how do you find the best influencers who would work well with your brand?
Well, I mean, for us, it's really easy. We have an amazing data tool that essentially allows us to not only source the best and the most highly engaged with influencers that are up and coming, so we can essentially find them before they're almost up in the millions and costing an absolute wedge of your marketing budget to use. But I guess paying attention to hashtags, if you're doing it yourself, go on TikTok, type in hashtags that are relevant to your brand, and you might actually be able to find some influencers who are posting content that would work really well for you and your products.
And the follow-up part to that question, I think, Emily, you might have some interesting stories about, is how do you actually reach out to those influencers, especially if they need to follow you on TikTok in order for you to be able to DM them?
Yeah, I've definitely got some stories which would for another day, I think. But the large part is that, I think sometimes influencers perhaps get a reputation which isn't fully deserved, but something which has come up multiple times is people want to work with brands who they like, is the bottom line of it. If you have a strong tone of voice, if you have, a really cool brand identity. And if you have products which, like Lola said, they might not be a direct, oh my goodness, I love health foods, a health food brand has reached out to me. But, if they have a slight interest in your brands and in your products, the likelihood is that they'll want to work with you. It's a biometric relationship. If you're going to want to work with them and they're going to want to work with you. And also going on from what Lola said is allowing them to have a bit of freedom. So if you can go forward to them and go, this is what we're trying to do, this is our brief, but not presenting them with a 4-page script, I think they'd be more likely to want to work with you, because at the end of the day, they also have their online image and their online persona, which they also want to preserve a bit. So yeah, sort of respecting one another and giving them the freedom to create content which hopefully is going to mirror what you guys want to make anyway.
Yeah, you've raised some really good points there, Emily. And also, just to add to that, very conscious that, it might be easy to say, well, if you're a brand that people want to work with, then it's easy. But also, you may be a brand that isn't necessarily perceived as being super sexy or desirable. And what I would say is that, particularly when it comes to creators on TikTok, influencers on TikTok, and the audiences that exist on this platform as well, these people are hugely value-led and driven. So if you rein it back from your product and actually think about your brand ethos and values, and, if you look at Gen Z, for example, they are incredibly socially, culturally, environmentally conscious. And if you can kind of take it back a few steps and be that brand that is doing their bit for the environment, etc., then maybe, the actual products that you have to offer aren't what everyone is going after right now. But if you can take it back to brand values, then that will be doing your brand a world of good. And it's more likely that you'll be able to work with creators who you are looking for within the campaign.
And let's touch on paid media for a second, because there's two different kinds of paid media. There's boosting, and then there's a paid ad, both of which come when the ban kicks in, aren't going to be allowed to promote specific HFSS products. That said, we do have 6 or potentially 18 months now to do that. One strategy that we've seen work quite well is with relatively new. TikTok have actually allowed you to optimize your paid media to drive followers to your account as the conversion metric, which basically means that as it's showing people the ads, it's going to show it to people who they think are likely to follow your account. I know we've been using that to help loads of brands, some food and some otherwise, actually grow their TikTok accounts. How would a brand approach a paid media strategy? And that ties in nicely with a question we've had from Marie is, actually, does the paid media strategy need to match the organic, or can you have separate creatives running?
So with the second part of that question, does it need to match the organic part of the campaign? I wouldn't say necessarily it needs to match, doesn't need to be like for like, but I would definitely recommend it complementing the organic side of the campaign. So if we are specifically talking about account growth here on TikTok, then so ideally you'd have influencers posting organically on their own TikTok channels. Then you have the content that content creators are producing for you and you're posting from your own TikTok channel. And that's when the paid media comes into it. And you essentially want to boost this media that is housed on your own channel out to audiences who are most likely to be interested in your brand. But yeah, I think that's probably as much context as I can give for that, without knowing the specifics.
And I think one question we had, in case I wasn't clear, is the difference between a boosted post and a paid ad. So that everyone knows, a boosted post is where a post will live on either a brand's or an influencer's account, and you boost it to new audiences, and you can target the audiences in there. So very similar to a promoted post on Facebook or Instagram. What it means is that any views, engagement, likes and comments that happens on that boosted post will live on that post on the brand or the influencer's channel. Compare that to a paid ad where actually it doesn't live on a specific account. It just lives as an ad, and you can basically set the conversion goal to be whatever you want, but the ad won't live longer than the paid budget is running for. I think it's really interesting. before they introduced the paid ad conversion goal of being able to drive for followers, we actually found that boosting was the most effective way to grow an account, because if you're putting out really great content and you're boosting that in front of your target audience who you know are going to like that content, then they're likely to click through, see other great content on your account and follow it, right? So I think that's really interesting, Lola, what you were saying about the paid strategy needing to complement the organic strategy as well. I think one thing that is really interesting when we look at TikTok and paid and organic strategies is actually how, what is the importance of growing an account, and why does it matter whether you've got a lot of followers if TikTok is the platform that anything can go viral on?
That is a good question. I would say, we're living in an age where there are new potential marketing channels popping up left, right, and centre every 5 minutes, and it's very overwhelming. I would say that TikTok, given the size and scope of the platform right now, is definitely something that you should be focusing on. And maybe it's not going to be the next biggest traffic or sales driver for your brand. However, I believe it all lies in brand perception and, kind of just, I know we've mentioned this a few times now, but it really does go back to establishing and growing and reiterating your brand personality amongst your target audiences, and, finding ways to show people why they should be following your brand, why they should be investing in your brand, who you are. Probably allows more personality to shine through than any other form of marketing, I would say.
And I think we've had a lot of questions about going viral. How can you make something go viral? That's a question that we get all the time. And I've seen another question here from Ben, who's a food brand with 2 million followers across social. So Ben, it sounds like you're doing well already. Had a few viral hits, but actually some things can be viral and some things can perform badly. I guess my first question on virality is, what does it mean to go viral? What can you actually measure?
The ultimate question. Well, I think that is one for the brand and each and every brand themselves, because it's incredible the amount of brands that we speak to and their key objective is going viral. But then when you dissect that, actually you find out that, the brand maybe wants 5 million views for their campaign, or they want a really high engagement rate. They want increased brand sentiment and uplift. So it really is, I would say, personal to each and every brand and person that you're speaking to. Going back to, I think it was Ben, the content creator, 2 million followers is very impressive, very well done. But I would just say, keep at it. Don't be disheartened if you post a video and it flops, and literally just presume that everything that you're doing is testing and learning. And eventually you will establish a formula that works. And also, if you look at the influencers who are, up in the millions and millions of followers, they still have videos that don't do as well as other videos. But I think what makes them successful is they do just get back on the horse and they give it another go. And then hopefully a couple of posts later, it's doing really well again. So yeah, definitely don't be disheartened by those posts that don't do as well, because more often than not, that probably will be the case.
Yeah, so I was just going to jump on there if that's okay, and just say as well to Ben is that, sometimes it can be really beneficial to do a deep dive analysis of your own page. So sometimes it can be something as simple as, the thumbnails, which have a, say you're a food brand and you show a lot of recipes or a lot of dishes. Sometimes it could be, you've got a bird's eye view of the dish and that's the thumbnail, and it could be actually videos with that thumbnail perform a lot better. Or actually, if I put text on the screen, if I have a certain overlay, it performs better than others. So like Lola said, a lot of trial and error, but kind of don't underestimate the importance of those small decisions of having text overlays or having a certain thumbnail or, doing things like that. And, your caption, what are people going to see? If they're quickly glancing at the video, things like that can actually make a massive difference.
Yeah, definitely. And also one more thing that someone pointed out to me something that I heard in a webinar a few weeks ago is a lot of brands are doing this now, and it's like almost an enhanced level of community management whereby brands and creators are reaching out to their followers who have either commented or engaged with their posts in one way or another, and actually asking the question, what did you like about this? What didn't you like? Why do you think this is amazing? Why did you say that comment? I know there are only so many hours in the day, so realistically, you're not going to be able to do this with every single comment and follower who interacts with a post, but these are the people who you're marketing to and who you're producing content for. So actually being able to ask them firsthand is so powerful. And it's something that, for example, TV can't do that. So yeah, make the most of it whilst you can.
If you don't have time to do it, that's why you hire a wonderful agency that can handle your community management and research for you.
And there it is.
We've slightly skewed back onto content, which works out because we've got a couple more questions on that. One being from Jade. What's your opinion on brands on TikTok putting their employees front and center of their content? Do it or don't? Emily, I feel like you'll have some good thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, first I'd say I think a given massively depends on the type of brand, but I'd say we have seen some incredible success stories of people who did it. Like, I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but Marks and Spencer's had all their different, they've got their main M&S food account, but also individual stores were creating TikTok accounts and getting their employees to do dances. And I think they released a Christmas single. That shows that the power of TikTok, the capability to actually enter mainstream media and, cultural movements. So I would say if it's something that your employees are comfortable in, and if you think it's going to bring something to the content, I think, like I mentioned before, viewers are, they're not idiots. They will be able to tell if something's really, really obviously trying to do something. But if there's a really cool way to integrate them in, then I would say absolutely do it. I think, as Lola said many times, it's a real trial and error. But I would say if, it's something where you think, actually, we've got some really charismatic people here and we want to show this side of our brand and that we're very personable and that, we're not just a corporate logo. We've actually got some really great employees behind us. If you can put them in content, I would say absolutely give it a go.
Completely agree with everything you've just said. And just to add to it, do all of that, but just make sure the brand personality is present throughout.
And we all know that content with faces in it often performs really well on TikTok, right? And I think to tie that back to HFSS, I actually think that's a really great way to do brand marketing without focusing on an HFSS product. If you're McDonald's and you're not allowed to promote a specific burger on TikTok, then why not have your employees in their McDonald's uniform, very recognizable, just doing silly things that don't involve products? People are still going to love that, and it's still going to push that feeling that McDonald's is a happy place for a lot of people. While we're on the subject of legislation, we've had one question about alcohol brands and how they can use TikTok. I'll jump in on this one. TikTok's community guidelines actually don't allow alcohol brands to advertise or have an account. So we would generally recommend that if you are an alcohol brand, TikTok isn't the platform for you right now because it's likely the content will get taken down. That said, what we are seeing a few alcohol brands do, which is really cool, is using other platforms such as Instagram, especially with Reels being so similar to TikTok. We've seen a lot of brands take TikTok style content or even TikTok trends and create content around that and push it out as ads on other platforms. So that's always going to be our recommendation is, we could even use TikTok influencers who are recognized as TikTok influencers, but we wouldn't recommend posting anything on TikTok. We're going to do one more question, which is around trending songs. And actually, when you do have a business TikTok account, you obviously can't use the trending songs. So what are some of the ways to get around this is how the question is phrased. Although not that we're in the business of, trying to get around laws, but what advice would you give to a brand that wants to use trending audio?
I feel like that topic comes up in every webinar we do. Getting around laws, not trending sounds. So my recommendation would be channeling custom sounds. As a brand, you can produce yourselves or you can ask an agency to produce a custom sound for you. And that has a number of benefits to it. You know, if you get something catchy, if you get it right, then hopefully people will jump on board and start producing user-generated content. But also, even if people like the sound and it's catchy and it works for a video they're producing, even if their video is not, let's say, for example, a whipped coffee that they're making with your brand of coffee, that doesn't matter because your brand is still attached to it. It still has your handle against its name, and your brand will still have ownership of it. So it's like less direct marketing if that sound's being used in other content throughout TikTok. And you never know, like it's potentially one of the more easier ways for your brand to go viral.
And as we're approaching time on here, I've got one last question for each of you. I'd love to hear, do you have a brand that you think is doing really well on TikTok?
Many brands. Off the top of my head, especially if we're thinking food and drink, I think Innocent Smoothies are a great one to go and have a look at. They have got a very succinct brand, as Lola has said, about tone of voice and how important it is. They've absolutely nailed that. And their content is just incredibly entertaining. They've really understood the whole, you know, the balance between product placement and then engaging with trending content and sort of cultural movements. So they would be a great one for me. And then also, I suppose, in a different vein, I'm a big homeware fan, so I love the account of Made.com. And they're an example, I think, of a brand who they've got a really, really successful TikTok account that it's pretty different. You know, it doesn't jump on a lot of trending audios. They've sort of found their niche and their content style, which works for them and which their followers love. And they do that really, really successfully. So yeah, I suppose that'd be two. I'm intrigued. I think I know what Lola's answer will be, but
I mean, those are both really amazing TikTok accounts, and also, like you said, there are so many incredible food and drinks TikTok accounts out there. I'm, however, going to go with something a little bit off piece to this conversation and say Duolingo. They just get it so right. They get trends, they get humour, they create their own original weird skits that are so strange but so funny. I just feel as though they're like the perfect combination of TikTok educated and fearless, and I love it. So yeah, for anyone who is watching today and don't follow Duolingo, I would highly recommend it. And we're not managing their account. That wasn't a plug.
Love that. There you go. Well, I think that is all of the questions we've had. Let's call it there. If anyone does have any further questions or wants to, I guess, ask us specifically about strategy for their brand, any tips they can be using, anything like that, please do feel free to reach out to us. We're always happy to help and do different sessions that can be very focused towards you. Hopefully, we will find out a little bit more as time goes along as to when the rules are actually going to be changing. As I say, at the moment, it looks like it's going to be the 1st of Jan 2024, but who knows? Maybe it'll get pushed back again and all of this fuss will have been about nothing, but it won't have actually been for nothing because we'll have all grown great TikTok accounts that we can still use. Until next time, I hope everyone has a great day and rest of the week, and hopefully see you on TikTok soon.
Thanks so much for coming, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.